Tonight, let us wander into a world where the winds carried a different scent, where the wealth of empires was measured not in gold or silver, but in the slow, fragrant smoke that rose from sacred braziers. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. Imagine a world where the Incense Road did not fade into legend, but grew, like a great ancient tree, its roots deepening, its branches stretching across seas and deserts, shaping everything in its gentle, persistent shadow. In this world, commerce flows like a river of perfume, and the quiet, patient traders of Arabia hold the keys to the gates of the world. Let us drift back to where it all began with a single, pivotal choice. In our world, the great powers of antiquity, Rome, Persia, the empires of the East, often sought to dominate through conquest, their wealth built on tribute and plunder. But in this one, a different understanding took root, as soft and inevitable as dawn. It began not with a battle, but with a bargain. In the whispering sands of the Hadramaut, the clans who harvested the sacred resins, frankincense and myrrh, realized their true power did not lie solely in the gnarled trees that wept these precious tears. It lay in the journey, in the knowledge of the empty places, in the secret locations of wells that were mere damp patches beneath the dunes. A council of elders, their faces lined like the desert canyons, made a pact under a canopy of stars. They would not sell their harvest to the foreign merchants who came to their coasts. Instead, they would become the merchants themselves. They would build the ships, train the camels, and control every step of the fragrant journey, from the scoring of the tree bark to the moment the incense crumbled onto the hot coal and a world away. And so the world changed. Slowly, slowly, like the turning of a great sand-polished wheel. The first consequence was not political, but geographical. Cities did not rise at the points of swords, but at the junctions of comfort. Where a caravan could find water after a week of dry travel, a settlement blossomed. Not a fortress, but a caravanserai, a place of rest. Imagine the architecture born of this need. Low, sprawling complexes of sun-baked clay and palm wood, built around vast shaded courtyards where camels could kneel and sigh. The walls were thick, not for defense, but to keep the coolness of the night trapped within against the day's heat. Windows were small, mere slits that admitted slender beams of light that danced with motes of dust and fragrant powder. The air in these places was a tapestry of scent. The dry, clean smell of wool and leather, the sweet hay of fodder, the rich, resinous perfume of the cargo, and always, underneath it all, the mineral scent of water drawn from deep, secret aquifers. From these caravanserai, great cities grew, like pearls forming around a grain of sand. Ubar, the fabled city of pillars, became not a myth, but a metropolis of trade. Its towers not of marble, but of intricately carved rose-colored sandstone that glowed in the evening light as if lit from within. Canals, narrow and straight, brought water from distant mountains to feed lush interior gardens, where the sound of dripping water was a constant, soothing melody. The streets were narrow and winding, shaded by woven palm frond awnings, designed not for chariots, but for the slow, swaying walk of laden camels and the unhurried footsteps of merchants in soft leather sandals. Let us follow one such merchant, not a king or a conqueror, but a man whose life is woven into this fragrant tapestry. His name is Khalid, and he is a mukarib, a master of the caravan. We meet him not at the beginning or end of a journey, but in the middle of one, in the heart of the empty quarter. The sun is a white coin in a bleached sky, and the heat shimmers above the dunes like a mirage of water. But here, in the lee of a great crescent-shaped dune, Khalid's caravan is at rest. The camels are kneeling, their soft groans a peaceful sound. The air is still, carrying only the faint, clean smell of sand and the whisper of the wind smoothing the dune's crest. Khalid sits on a worn carpet, a ledger of softened leather open on his lap. His fingers, stained slightly brown from handling resin, trace lines of elegant script. Not just numbers, but notes on the quality of the frankincense from this season's harvest. the temperament of the new camels, the state of the well at the last stopping point. He is a man of details, for in the desert, details are life. His clothing is practical, layers of fine undyed wool that insulate against both heat and cold, a headscarf draped to protect his neck. His movements are economical, calm. He looks up as his young son, Amin, approaches with a small brass cup of bitter, cardamom-scented coffee. "The resin from the Wadi Dhaka," Khalid says, his voice a low, rasping whisper from the dry air. "It has a sharper scent this year. The winter rains were light. It will burn cleaner, but the priests of Isis in Alexandria will pay a premium for it. They say it makes the visions clearer." He speaks not of conquest, but of the preferences of a priestess a continent away. This is the pulse of his world, a connection of senses and spirits mediated by smoke. Amin listens, his eyes on the horizon. For him, the world is a map of smells and stories. The cinnamon from Serendib is a deep, warm bark. The pepper from the Malabar coast is a bright, sharp dust. The silk from the Far East is not a color, but a sensation, cool and smooth against the skin. His father's trade is a symphony of textures and fragrances, a slow dance across the face of the earth. There is no urgency, only the patient, rhythmic progress from oasis to oasis, from trading post to trading post. The politics of this world are shaped by this rhythm. Treaties are not written on parchment, but remembered in the shared memory of a water rights agreement between two clans, sealed 3 generations ago by the exchange of a particularly fine batch of myrrh. Alliances are maintained not by soldiers, but by the annual gift of incense, arriving with the regularity of the seasons. As decades turn into centuries, the influence of the Incense Road ripples outward, a stone dropped into the pond of history. Rome, rather than sending legions to pillage, sends envoys to negotiate, their togas seeming heavy and awkward in the dry heat. They learn to sit on cushions, to sip from small cups, to value the subtle art of the bargain. A Roman senator's status is marked not by how many captives he has paraded, but by the quality of the frankincense that smolders in the lararium of his villa, a scent that clings to his robes and follows him into the Senate, a quiet assertion of a connection to a wider, more mysterious world. In the East, the great dynasties of China find their Silk Road intersecting with these southern routes of perfume. New hybrids emerge. Chinese junks with their batwing sails are adapted with deeper holds for bulky resin sacks. Arab dhows, with their lateen sails designed for the fickle winds of the Indian Ocean, learn to carry not just incense but porcelain, and with it the delicate aesthetic of the East. The architecture of the coastal cities begins to reflect this fusion. The graceful, upward-curving roofs of the East appear over courtyards designed in the Arabian style, and the geometric patterns of Islamic art begin to incorporate the sinuous forms of dragons and phoenixes. The technology of this world evolves but gently, always in service to the journey. The astrolabe is perfected not for war, but for navigation across trackless deserts and star-lit seas. Water clocks measure the watches of the night in caravanserais, their steady drip a companion to the snoring of the beasts. Paper, learned from the East, becomes the medium of the merchant's contract and the poet's verse, far more common than in our own history, creating a literate culture of account keepers and storytellers. The great libraries of this world are not in cold stone palaces, but in the bustling, sun-drenched ports of Aden and Muscat, filled with logs of winds and currents, maps of hidden oases, and pharmacopoeias listing the uses of 1,000 herbs and resins carried from the corners of the earth. We leave Khalid and Amin as the caravan begins to move again at dusk, when the world is bathed in violet and orange. The stars emerge, brilliant and close in the desert sky, the same stars that guide a dhow captain on the Erythraean Sea and a camel driver in the Gobi. There is a deep, unspoken unity in this world, a sense that all people are connected by these slow, deliberate lines of exchange. Conflicts are mediated by merchant councils, where the price of disruption to trade is weighed and found wanting. It is a world not without disagreement, but where the friction is smoothed by the immense, patient weight of a system that benefits from calm. Centuries flow like sand through an hourglass. The age of exploration in this timeline is not a race for colonies, but a gradual, curious unfurling. Ships are sent out not to claim, but to connect, to find new sources of strange spices, new peoples with whom to bargain. The discovery of distant lands is met not with gunfire, but with gifts of incense and bundles of cloth, and a quiet observation of what might be offered in fair return. And so, as you lie there, breathing in the dark, picture this world in its twilight hour. In a quiet courtyard in a city of sandstone, an old man, a descendant of Khalid many times over, prepares a brazier. The night air is cool, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine. He takes a piece of frankincense, a tear of opaque golden resin, and places it on the glowing charcoal. It hesitates, then begins to melt, releasing a plume of smoke that rises straight up in the still air, a column of fragrant gray against the indigo sky. The scent is clean, ancient, and comforting, pine and lemon and a deep, woody sweetness. It is the smell of temples and healing rooms, of quiet contemplation and peaceful commerce. It is the smell of a world that chose the path of the merchant over the path of the warrior, that found its wealth in the gifts of the earth and the connections between peoples. In this world, the night is not a time for fear, but for rest, for story, for the shared silence of those who have traveled far. The roads are safe, for to harm a traveler is to harm the lifeblood of civilization itself. The great exchanges happen not in shouting markets at noon, but in murmured conversations over cups of mint tea as the stars spin slowly overhead. It is a world that moves at the speed of a camel's walk and a dow's glide, a rhythm in tune with the human heart and the patient turning of the seasons. So let this scent of frankincense, imagined now in the quiet of your room, be a bridge to that calmer timeline. Feel the peace of the endless desert, not as a barrier, but as a wide, silent sea of sand under a blanket of stars. Hear the soft jingle of camel bells, a distant, soothing sound. See the warm, welcoming light of a caravanserai lantern, glowing like a fallen star in the vast darkness, a promise of rest and community. In this world, you are always welcome, always on the way to somewhere, never lost, always found along the great fragrant road. Thank you for dreaming with us tonight. Sleep well. The old man watches the smoke rise, his eyes, clouded with age but still sharp, following its unwavering column. It is a ritual performed countless times, yet it never loses its meaning. This particular resin is from a grove he visited as a boy, a memory carried in its scent. He hears the soft scuff of slippers on stone and knows without turning that his granddaughter, Lila, has joined him. She settles on the cushion beside him, her own cup of tea steaming in the cool air. "Tell me about the Garden City," she says, not for the first time. It is her favorite story. He smiles, the lines around his eyes deepening like the tracks of wadis after rain. "Shiraz," he says, the name itself a sigh. "It is not a city one sees, child. It is a city one breathes." And he begins, his voice the dry rustle of palm fronds. He tells of how, at the convergence of 3 major incense routes, a different kind of urban heart grew. Shiraz was not a caravanserai grown large, but a city conceived as a gift to the senses. Its founders, merchants of immense wealth and, more importantly, immense taste, decreed that a quarter of all land within the walls would be given over to gardens. Not private, walled things, but public, flowing spaces. Canals, engineered with a gentle, persistent gradient, carried snowmelt from distant mountains through the very heart of the city. They ran along streets, not beneath them, so the sound of water was a constant murmur, a counterpoint to the quiet bustle. The air, the old man whispers, closing his eyes, was a layered thing. In the morning, it was damp with the smell of soil and blooming roses, thousands of them, in varieties brought from every corner of the known world. the damask rose, with its deep, heady perfume, and the lighter, tea-scented ones from the eastern mountains. By midday, the sun would warm the citrus groves, and the scent of bitter orange and lemon blossom would rise, crisp and clean. And always, underneath, was the bass note, the resinous, sacred smell of frankincense and sandalwood, drifting from the warehouses and the quiet, open-fronted studios where master blenders crafted perfumes. In this world, the perfumer was as esteemed as the philosopher, the gardener as honored as the architect. The libraries of Shiraz held not only books of poetry and star charts, but vast, leather-bound folios detailing the cultivation of plants, the distillation of essences, the alchemy of scent. It was said that a master perfumer from Shiraz could identify the valley of origin of a jasmine flower by its scent alone, or tell the season in which a sandalwood tree was felled by the oil's character. Lila listens, her chin resting on her knees. And the people? They moved slowly, he says. There was no need for haste. A transaction might take days, conducted in a garden pavilion, surrounded by the hum of bees and the trickle of water. A merchant might spend an afternoon discussing the philosophical symbolism of myrrh, its duality of pain and healing, with a buyer from Byzantium before ever speaking of price. The rhythm of the city was set by the call to prayer, which itself was not a sharp command, but a melodic invitation that floated over the greenery, and by the changing of the guard at the water gates, a ceremonial handing over of the keys to the canals. This cultural efflorescence, born of commerce and comfort, radiated outward. The great works of art from this era were not monuments to battle, but to journey and exchange. The epic poems, written on that abundant, creamy paper, told not of heroes slaying monsters, but of caravans crossing starlit deserts, of the friendship between a spice merchant from Arabia and a scholar from Nalanda, of the love story between a ship captain's daughter and a botanist from the misty hills of Malabar. Music developed soft, complex modalities meant to imitate the sound of wind over dunes, the patter of rain on a ship's sail, the distant cry of a desert fox. The old man pauses, taking a sip of his now cool tea. The frankincense has burned down to a gray ash, but its scent lingers, woven into the night. But it was not a perfect world, he continues, his tone softening further. There was still hardship. A well could go dry. A ship could be lost to a sudden monsoon. A blight could strike the frankincense trees. Yet these calamities were met not with blame and war, but with collective response. A network of granaries, maintained by a small tax on trade, ensured no one starved. Shipwrights from across the Indian Ocean would gather to study the wreck of a lost dhow, not to assign fault, but to learn how to build a better one. The knowledge was too precious, the connections too vital, to be squandered on conflict. He describes the great councils, held every decade in the Rose Hall of Shiraz. Merchants, navigators, botanists, and elders from every major route would gather. They would share maps updated with new oasis locations, discuss shifts in wind patterns recorded over generations, debate the sustainable harvesting of rare spices. It was governance by ledger and logbook, a slow, meticulous stewardship of the world they had woven together. Your great-great-grandfather Khalid, the old man says to Lila, he knew only the desert and the coast. But his choices, the choices of all those elders under the stars, made this possible. They made a world where a girl in a courtyard in a city of gardens can ask about a place she has never been and know that its scents and its stories are part of her inheritance. Lila is silent for a long time, looking at the stars. Is it still there? Shiraz? The city is, he nods. The gardens are still tended, the canals still flow, but the world has grown larger, the roots have multiplied, become more complex. The gentle rhythm is still there, but now it beats in time with 1,000 different drums. He gestures to a low table where a delicate porcelain cup sits, its glaze a perfect celadon green. That came on a clipper ship from the Jade Sea, a ship that uses winds my father could not have imagined. But inside it, he says, lifting the cup to her nose, smell. She inhales. The scent of mint and something else, floral and faintly medicinal, rises from the empty cup. What is it? A tea from a land so far south the stars are unfamiliar. They call it manuka. It is traded for bolts of silk woven here in the city. The ship's captain who brought it told me his grandfather was the first to make that journey. He did not go to conquer. He went because he heard a story from a Malay trader about a flower that healed. He went to find it to see if it was true. The old man sets the cup down with a soft click. That is our world. A story leads to a journey leads to a trade leads to a connection. It is always expanding, like the fragrance from this brazier, filling the space it is given. He prepares another piece of resin, a darker, richer tier of myrrh this time. As it begins to smolder, releasing a deeper, smokier, more introspective scent, he speaks again, his voice barely louder than the crackle of the charcoal. You asked if it is still there. The physical place is. But the true Shiraz, the true spirit of the road, is not a location. It is in the care taken in a transaction. It is in the willingness to sit and listen to the story behind a spice. It is in the understanding that the wealth of a journey is not just what you carry at the end, but what you learn along the way. It is in this silence we share now. They sit together as the night deepens. The myrrh smoke curls and spirals in the slight breeze, a dark ribbon against the sky. In the distance, the sounds of the sleeping city are gentle. The call of a night watchman, the soft melody of a flute from a nearby courtyard, the rustle of a date palm. It is a world profoundly at peace with itself, not because it lacks challenges, but because it has chosen, over and over across centuries, to meet those challenges with curiosity rather than cruelty, with exchange rather than extraction, with a patient faith in the next step of the journey. The old man knows his time for long journeys is past. His road now is the short walk from his garden to the library, from the courtyard to the prayer hall. But in Lila's eager eyes he sees the road continuing. She will learn the ledgers, yes, and the maps. But she will also learn the smell of rain on dry earth, the sound a camel makes when it is content, the way the light falls in the Wadi Dhaka at dawn. She will inherit the great, fragrant tapestry, and her hands, like all hands before hers, will add their own small, careful stitches. He feels no sadness in this, only a deep, quiet continuity. The Incense Road was never a single path. It was a living network, a circulatory system for the world's breath. And as long as there were those who valued the journey, who listened to the stories carried on the wind, who understood that true wealth was a shared and sensory thing, it would pulse with life. Go to sleep, little one, he murmurs to Lila, whose head now nods against his shoulder. Dream of rose gardens and strange southern stars. As she drifts off, lulled by the rhythm of his breath and the ancient, comforting smell of myrrh, the old man stays a while longer. He watches the embers of the brazier fade from orange to a dull, deep red. He listens to the night. Somewhere, far beyond the city walls, a caravan is making its night camp. Somewhere, a dhow is riding the night tide, its captain steering by the same constellations that wheel above this quiet courtyard. The world turns, and the great slow dance of give and take continues. It is a dance of incredible complexity, yet its steps are simple. One foot, then the other. One breath, then the next. A gift offered, a gift received. He smiles into the darkness. The choice made so long ago in the Hadramaut, the choice to carry the fragrance themselves, had sent its subtle influence through the centuries, like a note of perfume lingering in a fold of cloth. It had built cities of gardens and libraries of scent. It had shaped a civilization that measured its years in harvests and its glory in blossoms. It had crafted a peace, not as an absence of conflict, but as a positive presence, the presence of connection, of mutual need, of shared wonder. The final piece of resin was now just a memory in the air. The brazier was dark. The old man gathered his sleeping granddaughter in his arms, her weight as light and precious as a sack of first-harvest saffron. He carried her inside to a room where the moonlight fell through a lattice screen, painting shifting patterns on the floor. As he laid her down, the scent of the night, jasmine, distant desert dust, and the fading echo of sacred smoke followed them in, a gentle blessing. In a world that chose the merchant's road, sleep was not an escape, but a journey inward, a reflection of the journeys taken under the sun. And in that sleep, the stories of rose gardens and distant seas would mingle with the innate knowledge of a world woven together, a world where every breath was a thread in a vast, fragrant tapestry. The road was endless. The welcome was sure. The heart of the world beat slowly, patiently, fragrantly on.